Thanks, Tom. And it's great to see you all, and it's great to see more people joining. I've been to a few of these sessions, and I know that a few people join as we go into the first few minutes. So I wanted to try and balance an activity that made it meaningful as you joined, and also so that if you join a few minutes late, you haven't missed, dare I say, something really impactful and significant. So while you're joining, it would be fantastic just to hear a very simple response to the question of just how are you feeling today? And you can be as honest and open as you like. If you want to just shout out on your microphone, that's also perfectly fine. But I realize that that can be quite a boundary and quite a commitment. So if anybody wants to be bold enough to put into the chat, just how are you feeling? Happy, sad, stressed, excited, thoughtful, decaffeinated? Great. Oh dear, a little bit of tiredness going on in the group. Okay, there's some happiness. That's. I guess you can be happy and tired. There's always a mix, and I suppose the purpose of this activity is not just to have a sort of soft warm-up task, but also to show that everyone's different. And I know that we all know and appreciate that, but this is a warm-up task to what we want to be covering in the next half an hour, which is quite a personal topic, the act of reflection, and a reflection activity that you might be asking other people to be considering. How are they feeling? And what can you do, or what can they do as a result of all the different potential responses that you would get if you just asked random people that you don't know how they're feeling today? So thank you for everyone for sharing positive, negative, open, however you felt, even if you were just thinking about how you're feeling, that is relevant to this workshop. So welcome, thanks for engaging with the first warm-up activity, and I hope that there'll be a few more activities in this session that will get you thinking as well. So my name is Matt Jenner. I'm the founder of Coursensu, which is a learning design platform. You can find me on LinkedIn or on coursensu.com. But we're here to talk about you and your learners, and how can you add reflection exercises, and I do mean this, into any learning experience. So thanks for joining. Let's get on with it. For the starters, I thought that the topic for this talk and the title of the session was maybe quite clear, but just trying to keep it practical. I wanted to be very clearly articulating what we'll be covering in this session. But I did think, why not be a bit more sensationalist? So if I was more of a sensationalist type person, I might have gone with beating AI with this one simple trick, or personalized learning at scale. It's finally here. And maybe assessment hacks that can smash through your engagement barriers. I don't personally go with that style, but I can appreciate why other people do. It's often, if you get it right, and I don't think I have here, which is possibly why I don't do it, it's a way to hook people in to perhaps actually some sensationalist headline, but underneath it's quite a classic, maybe quite well proven technique, or at least you would hope so. And that's really all I'm getting at. Is reflection has been around, like reflection frameworks that I'm covering today have actually been around for decades. They're still used and they're still relevant because it's such a simple act and such a powerful act or action that you can encourage in people that it has proven the test of time. But there may be some people, and I've seen some names popping into the group that I recognize, who will probably know all about this, and I'll appreciate your input a bit later on. But for those that maybe want to go right back to the beginning, I just want to open up the question to you. What is reflection? What do you think reflection means, or what does it do to someone? What does it make them do themselves? And if you have a chance just to post it in the chat, I'd be very interested to hear your immediate thoughts or feelings or sort of concept understanding of what reflection is. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jodie. It's an instrumental part of the learning process. Kathleen, it's thinking about what you've learned. Self-analysis from Divyanshi. Thinking or considering something deeply. Yeah, by, sorry, I don't know, S Mitra. And Jose says something something we should before saying something. Yeah, okay, I like that. That's cool. That's a good answer. There are many comments that are on track, and I really appreciate you contributing. Thank you. Now, this is galling, so that's why I've put it in first. This is probably what reflection isn't. You're in an e-learning package, you're in a training program, and everybody halts to a standstill with a picture of a corporate entity telling you it is time. This is the reflection point. This is the reflection button. This is possibly the worst image I could find online. So if you made it, apologies, it was Creative Commons. But the question of, is this reflection sort of like a forced moment in time? Maybe. I think maybe at best this is reflection. It's just encouraging a sort of reflect now type activity with someone. But it doesn't allude to much, it doesn't deliver much, and it certainly doesn't carry much weighting or value for the learner. So perhaps this is a traditional model of reflection, and we're learning development professionals, so we know what reflection is. The comments have reflected that we know what reflection is. Sorry to dig into that on a double level. But what about your learners? What about just professionals and colleagues and people out there that are just trying to get by and they just need to learn something, or they just want to develop their skills or their knowledge about something? To them, if you just say reflect, they might be immediately thinking of the most fundamental type of reflection, which is to stare in a mirror and maybe think about yourself and a very personal experience. In this example, just a little girl staring into a mirror might be thinking about whether they're ready to go to whatever they're dressed up for, or if something looks the way that it's meant to look. You and I may think of a mirror as something you just check for, say, jam on your chin while you're running out of the house. But it's a very simple and sort of basic understanding of what reflection could be. But if you told your learners to reflect, you have to consider that this might be their understanding of how to reflect as well. So that's the first takeaway, is to consider what reflection means to the people that you're asking to complete a reflection activity. This is maybe a slightly more nuanced view of what reflection can be. Yeah, the mirror thing stays. However, the purpose of a reflective mirror on a car is so that you can very quickly understand your environment and take an action that will not cause harm to others. So there may be a mirror on a car to prevent a motorcycle that's coming by in your blind spot. And so the reflection activity of safe driving is actually to prevent accidents and to make sure that you're safe in an environment that is otherwise quite risky, quite dangerous. So this is a very similar metaphor of the mirror, but a very different set of actions and outcomes. And yes, this is very, very simple stuff. But again, sometimes just to explain the concepts will help you sort of be able to build on that for a more performant learning activity. So there are many ways to encourage learners to reflect, and I'll go into the benefits of reflection as well. But this is a framework that it has been around since the 70s. It's called What, So What, and Now What. And we're going to use this a few times in very simple ways, just to sort of ground and bring to life how a reflection exercise can be quite a universal tool that you can have in your learning design toolkit. And this framework is really trying to get you to sort of encourage someone to reflect in 3 stages. The first, which is what, is just to stop and think about something. So what made you think or feel a certain thought or a certain feeling? What caused that? What's the initial reason for causing it? The second step is, so what? Like, what were the implications of that thought or the outcome of that feeling? What happened to you? What caused it? What was the reason for you to stop and to think about that thing? This might sound quite basic, but then you can add on to it the sort of power play, the extra card, which is, well, now what? Like, what action is going to arise within you or because of you from the what, so what situation? And I will give you some examples. I'm sure that makes sense, but if it doesn't make sense, I'll put some examples in a moment, and we'll think about some examples for ourselves. But this is a very simple structure that you can apply in so many different ways. And it's one of those things where sometimes you just want a sort of toolbox. And inside your toolbox, you want things that you know are reliable and are likely to work. And if you've got learners that just really, really want to just race ahead, they just know that they need to complete something, they may not really be taking much in. You know that as much as I do. But if you put in a few slowdowns, a few intentional speed bumps that are in themselves purposefully strong activities, then you're saying to the learner, hang on, just pause here, think about the implications of why you're paused here, and then plan something that you can take away, like make an action that you own, that you're setting as an outcome of that experience. Now, why would you do all of this? Before I dig into how you can do it in more detail, there are some really strong connected reasons why reflection as a skill or as an activity can be powerful for the individual. First of all, learning how to learn has never been more important. So people feeling like you often see sort of stats of people in workplace learning who get nothing out of it. And I think I saw one today, it was as high as 73% of the workforce take some sort of work-based learning. They don't feel like they can apply it, or they don't feel like it was relevant to them and their problems. And so off they go again. That's not a reflection entirely on us. It's thinking about the individuals and how hard it is to be a very, very good learner. School is hard, university is hard, workplace learning is hard, lifelong learning is hard. So if you can give learners their own learning skills, their own ability to learn how to learn, then you can really equip them to be ready for career change, for different tools and systems and processes that come and feel like they get in their way, when really it's just a learning opportunity for them to come over. So reflection can lead to helping people understand themselves, understand how they learn, and giving them an extra sort of element in their toolbox. Paired with that is skills development. So reflecting and planning and acting off the basis of a reflection activity is a skill that once you've done it yourself, you might try to put that into others as well. So if you're a leader or a manager, or you've got a colleague, you might think that was really useful for me. What if I helped someone else as well? And that can help sort of bring up more people and have a broader impact. The same goes for if you think about when you're going to a job interview, or you're refreshing your CV, or you're going for a promotion. Maybe you've even got a team, or you're working in a group, and you need to write your quick bio as to why you're an amazing person and everybody should be sort of listening to whatever you say. Well, the STAR technique can be really powerful, which is the situation, task, action, and result. It's a technique to say why you made a difference in another situation. But STAR is very similar to a reflective exercise. It's what was going on? What did you do? What was the outcome of that? You find a lot of these frameworks really overlap and mesh, and that's because they're quite good. And so people have taken a framework, tweaked it, and called it something like STAR, because they saw it working elsewhere and wanted to have something very specific for a different discipline. The same goes for performance reviews. When you're thinking about whether your job description reflects your actual role, whether you want more salary, or if you want to change in job title, you probably want to have a strong argument. And you can make a strong argument if you actually sit back and say, what was going on? How did that change me? And what did I do as a result? Again, really simple, reflect, implications, and next steps. Same activity, just comes round and round. And lastly, it's really powerful for having broader conversations. So what I mean by that is, picture you creating a learning experience for 100 learners. Say those learners all have their own teams and their own managers. And within your learning experience, you create a reflection exercise that encourages them to have conversations out with the people in their learning group, or if they're learning independently, then outside of them learning on their own. Then what they get to do is that you say, have a conversation with your manager about how this made you, about this stage in the learning process, and have a conversation about what did it make you think or feel? What were the implications of that? And what would you do differently next time? So you can bring life to your learning experience outside of the sort of e-learning package or the training session in the room. that you've been running it with that individual. So it has that what's called a network effect. You're reaching more people through an activity that's as simple as stop, what, so what, and now what. And lastly, it's really powerful for social learning. So if you had a breakout room, you can say, let's just all get together and think about sharing. You don't have to share the sort of feeling side if you don't want to. You can just say, share your plan. But you can cue a learner up and say, do this bit yourself, but bring out the outcome and bring that to your group and compare your different next steps and maybe even justify why you're doing something different to someone else, and then see if someone can win someone over or change their mind. And that's a very powerful negotiation skill. So let's go on to the first workshop activity. We're going to try the what, so what, now what ourselves. I'm going to see who wants to put in the text chat and who's happy to come on a microphone. But I'm really hoping that this is quite straightforward. So you're at home, you're hungry. Let's just say it's 4:30. You've just been to a workshop and you've gone to the fridge, but the fridge is empty. So in summary, how did that make you feel? What led you to feel that way? And what did you do about that?
It made me feel more hungry.
Did you do anything about your hunger, Chelsea, or were you just like, "Ah"?
Probably just like, "Aw."
I don't want to come to your house. Thank you for contributing. So Kristen is just going to be frustrated and go and look elsewhere. I mean, that is a completely fair tactic of fridge no, cupboard yes, and then just start going for the unlabeled cans and seeing what's out there. S. Mitra is hangry because you wanted food, so you get some delivered. Yeah, that's more of a sort of results-driven outcome. That's completely reasonable. I love the fact that we should be at David's house because the fridge is never empty, because that would just not happen. So clearly David's ahead of the curve and plans ahead and has never had this situation arise in the first place. Yeah, nice. Laura's going to the secret chocolate drawer. That's a powerful place to be. Okay. Caroline lives in a magic house, which I appreciate. I think that's a cool approach as well. Okay. Well, this hopefully was, it's got a few people going, which I really appreciate. Thanks for contributing. But it really is as simple as, if you're constantly seeing the situation where you go to your fridge, you are really hungry, it's always empty, and your next step is, I'm going to make a food plan. Like, I'm going to have a weekly food shop. I'm going to make sure that I know all the meals I'm going to be eating. That would be a highly organized way out of it. But if you said, I'm just going to keep opening that fridge and just hoping someone else has fixed it for me, that would be a very non-performant resolution to this problem. Because especially if you live alone, like, no one's going to fix your fridge problem but you. However, it's almost like a fridge intervention, this example, but the purpose is just to say, if you face a problem and you feel bad about that problem, which is, now I'm hungry, your action should be, I want to mitigate that. I want to fill this fridge with food. I want to have it so that there's an order that always comes in. I want to resolve this issue. But I guess you could argue, if you hadn't set yourself up for that action, would you have completed that action any other way? Yes, you probably could have found many different routes into that action, but this is quite a simple way of encouraging someone to think about planning ahead for food delivery. Pretty simple. Let's do one that's a bit different. For the second activity, let's think about the impact of AI on you or on your role at work. So it's exactly the same structure. It could be 2 years ago, maybe you started right at the beginning, a year ago, 6 months ago, yesterday. You came across AI and it landed quite heavily onto your mind. How did that make you feel? And what led AI to make you feel that way about your role? And if you've got an answer, what did you do about that? Again, if you can post in the comments or come off microphone. Jody loves AI. Where it can clone you. Great. Okay, your action is you shout about AI from the rooftops, or your clone does it? I'm intrigued. Okay, yeah, there's some good positive. Okay, good, nice, thanks, Jody. So Caroline says, excited and intrigued and a bit nervous. I fully appreciate that initial reaction. And then the sort of what it led you to feeling excited and to be a bit nervous and what it might mean for your job. I think that is incredibly normal and perfectly reasonable. And then before I lose it in the scroll, and then you're using it, actively staying on top of the trends and staying ahead of the curve. I mean, isn't that a great outcome? There's many different positive outcomes and many different other types of outcome. But the idea that you could have something very significant to the future of your job maybe just get sort of brushed over, or just sort of, we don't need to check and see how people are responding to this. We'll just do that and hope everything's okay. Seems very risky compared to the idea of, let's say in a team meeting, we're just asking people, what does AI mean for us and our group? What are we thinking? What are we thinking and feeling about the implications of that on our group? And what should we do to go forward? Again, same framework over and over. And if anything, if you spot between the slides, we went from hangar to the future of our jobs with exactly the same activity. And then it's like, it is an activity that you genuinely can use in very few words. If your learners are prepared for the type of setup, the reason for this being powerful is it doesn't take much in terms of presentation of content. I'm just presenting to you, 20 words, but it can elicit emotional reactions to the future of work. It can make you think about changing your career. You might want to become more technical. You might want to run to the woods and never look at a computer ever again. Either way, the task is encouraging you just to start thinking and doing and then planning ahead. So it's a very pragmatic exercise. When I think if you go back to the beginning, reflection sounds a bit sort of like I just sort of think about myself and how I look and then look in the mirror type of activity. It's much richer than a look in the mirror. It's much richer than just looking back behind ourselves. Like reflection, I think, can be understood as where have we been? Where have we come from? And that might be the extent of what anyone's ever done when it comes to reflection, or their understanding of the word reflection, which is why that first image of just saying reflection is so poor, because we haven't set anyone up to take meaningful action or to consider what other people have done as meaningful action, or consider the feelings or thoughts of other people, which is how it really starts to come together. And there's many other frameworks. They're actually all very similar. I shared how what, so what, now what is really close to STAR in some respects. They share a similar origin, but this one is called CARL. I don't believe it's made by anyone called Carl. It's just to help someone understand and remember it. But again, this is a very similar structure. So CARL is context. And so that's describe the situation or the environment or the context in which something is happening. The action is quite quick compared to the previous framework. It's like, so what did you do? What happened next? What steps did you take given that situation, given that context? Results already leads into, and, so what? You did something. What was the impact? What was the measurable thing that changed as an outcome of that? And to explain that is a very powerful tool as well. And it's also reflective. And then, of course, learning. Can you identify within those actions, within that outcome? Can you identify what you have learned as an individual? This is quite different, but it's the same rough structure to encouraging someone to stop, look around, plan ahead, think about what that means and whether it could be replicated, and also think about what it means for them and the sort of takeaway demonstrable learning that has been achieved. And then lastly, there's some really simple ways to set a reflective task. I did say that this was a how to put it into any learning experience. And so we've seen in here coming onto microphone and sharing audibly, lots of great comments in the chat. A really, really standard way to get a reflective task set up is to say, write it down. So each learner, write it in your notes, write it in your journal, or use this pre-populated template. Writing is, for most people, a pretty fast and pretty accessible way to just get the reflection and the activity and the next step all logged and recorded, whether it's personal, submitted, shared, private, that's up to you. The second option is just internalization, which some of you will have been doing in this session. Is just thinking, going over in your mind, and then moving on. For a quick activity, that's great. That's really powerful. We shouldn't ignore that. Maybe for making it visible learning, that's a bit tougher because it's all up here. But you can then have another task that encourages them to do something afterwards. The third option is conversation. So bring 1, 2, 3, 4 of those steps of the frameworks out into a conversation. Share it with other people like you've done so amazingly in the chat for this. And then the last option is, and I'm sure there's a fifth and sixth, but the last that I could find in my head was production. So if you're on site or in a field or in an environment that it benefits, take pictures, make a video, do some audio, produce some content, put it in a portfolio, put it in a collection, put it on a blog, whatever. A way of reflecting can be really powerful if you reflect over time, and you can store it in something where you can start to look back and really see the journey that the learner is on. That's an incredibly powerful tool for you, the sort of designer of the learning experience, to be considering. So we're at the wrap-up stage. I just want you to share if there's anything that I've missed or anything that's really obvious to you that other people will benefit from. Is an open question. How do you add reflection into your learning experiences? We'll have an open floor for the last few minutes. Tasha says, written and conversation work well in the context of our training. Okay, cool. Yeah, great. I mean, I love doing it at the end of the week. An end of week activity, if you're doing something like an online course and you say a sort of like next week, like this week we covered X, Y, Z, next week is whatever, as a reflection exercise, because it can be quite a monumental shift and you're trying to sort of bring things together. A reflection exercise at the end of the week can be a really great opportunity to try and bring about a sort of summary and trying to encourage the learners to have a point that they can sort of wrap up a bit and then sort of drop off and then prepare for the next session. Let's see what's coming in the chat. Caroline has discussions. Yeah, group and paired and written workbooks. Wonderful. Ren's got text boxes where they can type in their responses and have a printout. Yeah, nice. So on the personal side, really powerful. Katrina intersperses it throughout a learning experience, individually and in small groups. Ooh, lost you. And then wrap up the course of larger individual reflections. That's brilliant. Yeah, nice. Can be as easy as 2 minutes and write down what resonates. Yeah, agreed. It is such a simply, like for the learner and for you, it can be such a quick activity, but it can also be for you a few minutes and for the learner, maybe an hour of learning. So when you're thinking about the size of the task, it can get quite chunky depending on what you're asking and the implications of that. Say, for example, if it's a reflective log, that can really grow. And then you might ask them to summarize 10 weeks of logged reflections. That becomes quite a sizable learning experience on its own. Yeah, Kristen's getting key takeaways, post-course survey, asking them to share one thing they've learned. Brilliant. Yeah, nice. White action items. Oh, thank you so much. There's so many great contributions coming in the chat. Anyone who's leaving, thank you really so much for attending, for contributing, and being an active participant.